point, the more that we keep affecting this ecosystem from a supply point, and that's the local council, the state government, you basically just keep holding it up. You keep adding costs. You keep making it more challenging, and that just goes to a buyer at the end of the day.
Yeah, it gets passed on.
It gets passed on, and you got to remember, like, Australia's a pretty lucky country. People want to live here. And I always remember this, and this is really early on in my career. I met a politician and he goes, John, one of the things that I can always do and I feel safe in Australia is that if the economy goes down, we just pull a lever and we let migration in. And what do we need for residential? We just need bodies.
Yeah. And
that's where it always happens. Like, look at what's happened from a population point since COVID. Like, how do we fix that? There's been, say, for example, in Queensland since COVID, Mark,
Queensland's been the biggest
430,000.
Yeah.
430,000 new people have come in, into that time frame, more than any state.
And that's interesting. And by the way, 430,000 people are not necessarily immigrants. A lot of them are just people come from Victoria and New South Wales too.
Yeah, it's interstate, it's overseas.
And one of the great areas that I must say I'm surprised by it, but the Gold Coast or Surfers Paradise, that southeast Queensland, let's call it, it's below Brisbane type of thing. Once upon a time, when it was a boom, it was going up. When it was a bust, it was the worst affected.
Yep.
But for some reason, all of a sudden, this is not the case for southeast Queensland. It's just going up and up and up and up and up and up and up. And can you give me some sense around that?
There's no supply down there. And I can tell you, I was in the GFC on the Gold Coast working that market. And you're right. Like it was, as soon as it went bad, everybody sold up.
I'm out.
Yeah. You saw it, right? Super got hit, all my holiday.
Oh, we got a period, John, where we wouldn't lend to people.
Exactly.
We said, I'm not lending any more money into Gold Coast.
No. And why would you? It wasn't as diversified as an economy. There's been lots of changes there where it's been able to hold its own now. And the challenge that we've got, very similar to Sydney in that respect, in terms of Southeast Queensland, particularly the Gold Coast, it's geography. It's got mountains to the west. It's got water to the east. And then you've got a very small slither of where you can actually do development.
It's got a border to the south.
It's got a border.
And then it's got Brisbane to the north.
Exactly. And, you think about COVID, obviously, people said, I'm out. I'm going to go to the sun. And I could afford to go and live in a pretty good area and have some money in the bank. And that's what they did. And I think the Gold Coast, I think, is probably more known internationally than Brisbane.
Do you think it'll outprice itself, the Gold Coast? Because it's gone fairly
it's gone hard. But you know what? This is the way I look at it. And just this is, again, from working on
and I'm not talking about Labrador either. I'm talking about like the coastal area.
The whole thing. And look, this is where I'd say, and I just had a look at the stats when I came in at the moment. From a registration point of view, the Gold Coast is sitting on about, if you think about its supply pipeline, it has no land.
Yeah.
Zero land. So from a housing point of view, it's vertical. It's a vertical area.
Yep.
And so, I look at that and I go, well, what's the biggest thing we've just been talking about is trying to supply a market. How hard is it to supply a vertical tower right now? Not everything is a AAA beachfront apartment. And that's where the Gold Coast at the moment is suffering. It is needing huge amounts of supply because the demand is so strong. The vacancy rates in some cases are like below 1%, 0%. That shows you like a future, and this is a great thing. This is probably the most interesting is New South Wales government just delivered a brand new mega hospital at Kingscliff, which is just south Tweed, right on the border, right?
800 million.
Huge. They can't get workers because people are queuing up, nurses, everybody trying to go and work. It'd be great to work in Kingscliff. The thing's beautiful. And they're there and they're like, where do I rent?
Yeah, where am I going to live?
And Bob's there going, I've got 5,000 waiting for you.
Well, because that
can't unlock it.
That area, Kingscliff, has exploded.
Yep.
Its
prices. It used to be affordable.
Yeah.
It used to be like a quiet place to go. Yeah. But that whole movement has just pushed south, and then you know what? It's actually pushed north into Logan, and Logan, which is between Brisbane, Logan. I'm seeing $1 million resales in Logan for areas that we were selling, pre-COVID sub 500,000 for a house and land.
Mate, Cameron Smith cannot any longer say come from the tough Logan hills of Logan.
I'm a Logan boy as well, so you got to go easy, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't. Well, it's a bit like where I come from, Punchbowl. There's like 1.5 million. The average price is 1.5 million. Like, I can't believe it.
Yep.
But but Logan's is selling apartments, houses for $1 million.
I'm selling in markets there right now. House and land, brand new house and land, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, and say 400 square meters. And that product is going now for
the land's 400 square meters. Yeah,
the land is 400 square meters. The house is about 190 square meters. We're selling right now brand new homes that aren't built. They've got to get built with everything included for over 800,000.
Wow.
And that's why I'm saying this is how important. You know, we've got to we don't have a lot of land up there. And then you think, well, how do we supply it without having to go and put all the road? And, you know, you talk about the big energy crisis that they're talking about in government right now. How do we make more cities?
Yeah.
It's actually cheaper to upgrade existing areas with infrastructure than it is to go and build a new city in this country. And that's our future.
Do the government come and talk to people like you?
We do talk to them.
Yeah.
It's always a bit harder to, you know, and we you know, they talk to us, but I don't think they really can go and do and do it is probably the hardest thing for them.
But like local governments, state governments, and local and state governments talk to you? There's no point talking to the federal government. The federal government can't do anything because it's a local level. And by the way, Queensland is a lot better than every other state. I mean, Brisbane Council and whatever the equivalent down is the Gold Coast, relatively speaking, I'm talking about, because you're a huge council, and it's a lot more it's a lot more in favour.
We're a lot easier to work with.
Then you go down to New South Wales, my God,
your councils are like the size of our suburbs.
Yeah, and they're just like really difficult.
Yep.
And or same Victoria's even worse. Apart from the fact they got a land tax down there for everything over $50,000 in value. Do you get dragged in and they say, well, okay, John, like, what do you reckon we could do to sort of open up more areas here or go build some more towers?
We've got a really good advocacy, which is like the UDIA, which is the Urban Development Institute of Australia. And those guys there take the fight, you know, through to state and local. I think I think there's two sides to that side, you know, to the government and obviously the industry. There's people that are really trying to make a difference and understand the challenges. And I think there's other people that are actually fighting against it. And so it's because of the agendas. Like we're in a very green mentality right now. We don't want to see the bad side that comes with population growth, you know, the impact on the environment. They don't want to see that. But that itself is, you know, the challenges in this country. We're very centralized. We built our cities very centralized. We don't have a three-dimensional living like the US.
We have 80% of Australia's population lives on the coast, and we're the only country in the world that does that, and we're the only country in the world that has more than 55% of its population live in 3 capital cities.
Yep. Well, you know that 430,000 we spoke of, 83% of that went into Southeast Queensland.
Wow.
That's the average. So you think all those people into an area that's 12,000 square kilometres or something like that, and that has no supply, and it's lost an element of its supply.
It's going to burst.
It's burst.
Yeah.
It's already happened.
Because, I mean, the reason why people went there in the first place, they're going to still go there.
Yeah. Yep.
Because
very different in Melbourne. Melbourne, probably I'd say the opposite of Melbourne.
Melbourne's gone backwards a bit.
Sydney and Brisbane, Melbourne's gone a little bit backwards, but it's not a bad market. It's just very good at supplying itself. It's very planned out. Sydney and Brisbane, very similar. And this is where I look at, if you ask the future of me and you go, okay, John, what's the market look like in a couple of years? And I go, exactly like Sydney. Brisbane is going to be like Sydney. It is going to be just as expensive. And it's because we share very similar things. We've caught up a lot in the last 5 years to Sydney. You know, we predicted that Melbourne would be the 3rd most affordable city. And it did. It started to happen. Like Brisbane's now more expensive than Melbourne. Melbourne, very good at, I've always called it the leaky bucket because it's so good at supplying itself. We're almost oversupplying itself, and that's what it's done. And then as soon as it gets a bit of a downturn, those fundamentals change. Whereas in Brisbane and Sydney, as we've seen it, like Sydney's not pretty flat right now. It's not It's not bad, but it's
grown a bit.
It's grown a bit, but fundamentally it's always going to grow a bit because it's got the same challenges. It's got a lot of overseas migration.
That's where the jobs are.
Where the jobs are, and supply is tight, and that's the challenge, and that's the secret.
So, bottom line is, real estate is going to continue to be a great asset class.
Absolutely. A long-term asset class.
Long-term asset class.
Long-term asset class. And that's where, we've got to stop looking at it like a share market. That's probably the one thing.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, you're right. We're not bouncing in and out every month.
No.
It's a long-term asset class.
Exactly.
But I still, someone asked me the other day, I still think it's the best asset class there is.
Well, look, from a mum and dad point of view, yes.
Yeah.
It is.
In terms of knowledge and understanding and, like how you can manage it. I'm sure it's not as liquid as a share market, but it's still the best asset class.
It's easier to understand for the average Joe.
For the average person, because they can listen to this podcast, but they can read stuff, they can find out, there's no supply.
Yep.
It's pretty obvious, no supply. And we keep talking about the housing market crisis. Well, if you've got a house or a bit of real estate, you're on the other side of that transaction. You're going up.
Yep.
And and Australia's love affair with property is going to continue.
I think so, and the world's. And this is where I keep coming back to, is that people want to live in Australia.
Yeah.
Like we have a great lifestyle. If you travel, you know exactly what we have here.
Yeah.
And we've got resources to back it. And that's where I look at this and we go, well, the future of residential property in Australia, I think, is still got growth in it, mega growth. It's got some challenges, definitely, but this is actually the most exciting market I've ever been in. In the over 20 years I've been doing this, what I'm seeing right now, I've never seen this before. It is the most exciting.
That'll do me. John Rivera, Director of Project Sales or Project Marketing at Colliers. Thanks very much, mate.
Thanks, Mark.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.